Hey guys, I've got something a little bit different today. I am going to make a couple of MemoryDex cards with you. And for this, I am using the Pink Paislee 5th and Monaco collection. Now, mostly I'm using a bunch of sort of scrap bits of paper that I've had from other projects that I've done with this collection, plus a bunch of the embellishments that I've got. And the first card that I've done here is I literally just pulled out one of those scraps, and the wood grain paper was so perfect. I love it. So I folded it up, and the branding strip on the other side actually had the same wood grain paper. So I just folded it up to match the branding strip. And then I'm just using my sewing machine to stitch around 3 sides. To be fair, I stitched around all of the sides, but I've only attached them on 3 sides. So I've got this little pocket card. You can see I also used the punch at the bottom to get the little feet. For the second card here, though, I am going to use the metal die. And I just want to find a paper that kind of coordinates with my first card, because I want these 2 cards to be a set. So one of them is going to have my journaling, and one of them is going to have my photo. So in the end I've gone with this kind of, it looks like a kind of Dalmatian dot to me, but I love the black and white with the wood grain, so that's what I'm doing. I have folded this one over as well, but I'm not going to make a pocket. I just want to make it that little bit stronger, so instead of having 1 layer of pattern paper, I'm going to have 2, so I'm just going to die cut them. But to make it a little bit easier for myself, I've added a tiny bit of adhesive into the middle, then I've die cut it, and then I did go and use my sewing machine and stitch all the way around the outside of that one as well. Now, to decorate these 2 cards, I'm kind of going to work on both of them at the same time. Like I said, I want these to be a matching pair, and so I'm going to go back and forth a little bit. But this paper here with the chevron stripe is just one of my favorites from the collection, so I definitely wanted to add that plus a little bit of color. And I also want to add a little bit of sort of gold shine. So I grabbed some of the thin washi tape from the set in the collection and just added that to the middle of that strip, and then folded it up a bunch of times just to create this little ruffle. I just want to make sure it's long enough to cover the card, and then to hold that in place, again, I'm going to run that through my sewing machine. It just helps to keep all of those little folds in place and makes it just that tiny bit flatter for adhering onto the card. So as far as a photo goes, I'm going to use a little Instax photo here. The colors in the Instax photo are a little bit dull, so I do want to add a bit more color into here. And I'm kind of going to give this card like a title. So as far as memory keeping goes, it's pretty traditional, just in a different kind of style. So I'm going to use 2 of the words from these little puffy sticker sets. They're so fun. I love these tiny puffy sticker words. I am just pulling them off the sheet so I can see how big they're actually going to be. Luckily, they are quite small alphas, so this is a reasonable size to put onto a MemoryDex card like this. You can see it does just fit. It is just going to fit on one side of my photo, but at least now I have them out and I can see depending on what other layers I'm going to put on there. So I've got a bunch of die cuts here, and I'm just going to go through those because I want to be able to add some things into the pocket, and I figured these like larger kind of journaling card pieces where I'm going to put some of my journaling, and I'm just going to stack those into the pocket, so that way I'm not I'm not restricted on the space that I've got. And I'm also going to use a few of these pieces for the original sort of decorative purpose here. And I pulled out that original really large pink flower, but I actually love these kind of softer peachy ones, especially with some of the other colors that I've already used, so I'm going to end up using those instead. I really don't know what I'm doing at the moment. I am just kind of layering pieces as I go. The card on the left I'm loving. I love that big love heart, and so that's kind of going to be, it's not really a title, I guess it's like a secondary title for this other card, so they both kind of go together. Now I don't want to overthink this too much. I think I have the tendency with projects like this, because I don't make MemoryDex cards that often. When I do tend to make them in bunches like this, and so I just kind of want to commit and go for it. The other thing I do love when making MemoryDex cards like this is my hot glue gun, because it is so immediate, and it does give that little bit of sort of bulk. Without being too outrageously bulky. I do love bulky MemoryDex cards, but in practical terms, I do want to fit a few into the box, so I don't want them too bulky. Obviously this is thicker than what I would normally put on any sort of traveler's notebook page or in my project life, so it is fun to have things a little bit larger. So I hot glued down the ruffle and that heart die cut, and I went to put down this floral, and I just don't kind of love the white outline of it. Nor do I love fussy cutting, but this is a fairly basic shape, and so you can see it didn't take me any time at all to just really roughly cut the white off, and I like it a lot better just having the pink run all the way to the edge. I am going to bulk this up as well, but to kind of help it out, because it's sitting on top of sort of uneven layers on that ruffle and the love heart shape. So I'm just going to stack a couple of bits of craft foam together and pop that under the flower, and then I can adhere that down with some adhesive. It just gives it that tiny bit more extra bulk. The hot glue did not melt my craft foam, so that was a lucky win, and it just helps to lift that up a little bit. Plus it gets rid of, you know, some of my horrible lime green craft foam that I never use. There is a little bit of lime green in this collection, so if you happen to look at it side on and see the lime green, it doesn't look super out of place. Now I'm going to add just one of these little hearts, these puffy hearts stickers. I just couldn't work out which one to use or where to put it. I wanted it to be able to stand out off the wood grain, and so in the end I went with the pink, and I haven't used a lot of that color pink, but I am going to add some onto that second card, which will actually end up being the first card coincidentally, and so I'm adding a tiny bit more here with one of these little phrase stickers, and I want to find a second one, and I'm going to add it underneath the heart, so it just adds a few more little details. And then as far as little details go, I'm going to add some of these gems. I haven't used many of these. They're not like my favorite thing to use because they are super huge, these pearls and gems. They are very large, so I don't get to use them a lot as far as like traveler's notebooks or memory keeping goes. So now is the perfect opportunity, although as you can see I am well out of practice. The little glue dots kept coming off them and I didn't want to have to try and adhere them on, so I'm persisting with trying to use my scalpel here and try to place them on where I think they should go, but in the end I'm just kind of scattering them wherever, and I'm using all of them, the little pink gems, the pearls, and the black kind of dots as well. And I'll add some more of those onto the second card as well, just to kind of tie that all together. I figured that was a good place to stop and to actually start working on this other card. I had pulled out the kind of gold foiled frame to sit behind that Instax photo, but it just didn't give it enough color. It didn't stand out enough off the background. And so I went back through some of the scraps I already had on my desk, and nothing really was jumping out at me, so I had a look at some of the other pieces that I hadn't pulled out, and I found a couple of patterns that are just a little bit darker, a little bit bolder, that kind of are just going to help that lift off the black and white polka dot. My photo it's not black and white, but there is a lot of black and white in the photo, and so it just doesn't stand out off the page. So I first layered that kind of trellisy looking green pattern, and then from this bolder pattern I tried to cut as much of that kind of pink flower out as I can, just because again I'd added those few pieces of that kind of fuchsia pink onto the other card, and I want to make sure I get some of that onto this card as well. I adhered my photo down onto that first bit of pattern paper, but I have had experience before with Instax photos kind of losing their grip with adhesive, so I do make sure that I add some sort of staple or washi tape or something like that, just to make sure that doesn't fall off, and that's what I did there before I glued it onto the second pattern paper. Now I'm going to do the same thing with this die cut. I'm thinking it's going to work. It gives me a place to put my title anyway, and so I was just I was sort of experimenting with whether I wanted those green leaves on there. I was thinking I might cut them off. They were kind of not in the right placement for me. I didn't love the way they were placed, and I thought I would just cut them off and have the flower, but I actually really liked having those little pops of green on there. It just gave it a bit more contrast, and it's not an extra layer, but it kind of feels like an extra layer, so I decided to leave them on, at least for now. I thought I can always cut them off later, but actually I do end up liking it. And I'm going to do the same thing that I did with the other flower. I'm going to lift this up with a couple of layers of craft foam, just to give this card the same kind of depth that the other one has. So there's not as much, there isn't as much depth on here, so I did want to raise this up just a little bit to give me an extra layer. And so I did decide to stick in this little circle die cut underneath, again just to help that really light coloured peach flower sort of stick out off there. And like I said, this gives me somewhere to put my title, so I am just gonna use my ruler and try and keep this as straight as possible and just stick my title down onto the little peachy flower. It helps those words stand out so much more than if it was on the background. And again, I'm going to add in a few of these little gems. Actually, I say little, but I actually added quite a few of those sort of larger ones just because I had the space to fill. I did toy with the idea of adding some of those lime green gems because there is a little bit of lime green on the other card that I made, but in the end I just could not bring myself to do it. So here is my final little set of MemoryDex cards. The last thing I have to do is just add my journaling. I did both of that on my typewriter, just ran them straight through, and just can tuck them back into the pocket, and I'm all done. Thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. If you want to keep watching, there are a couple more videos on screen. Otherwise, I'll see you next time. Bye.